Worst NASCAR paint schemes of the year. How's it going, y'all? Welcome to a special episode of Out of the Groove. My name is Eric, and I'm here to ruin your day. No, but I am going to rank my top 10 least favorite NASCAR Cup Series paint schemes of 2023. Last week, I picked out my favorite schemes of the year. If you missed it, you can click right here. But what goes up must come down. Today, we're rifling through the reject pile. Look, as always, art is subjective. Everyone's tastes are different. Mine, of course, are correct. But in all seriousness, I don't want this to come off as hostile. Designing NASCAR Cup Series paint schemes is tough work, and you've got a lot of different groups you have to please. The sponsors, the teams. NASCAR has strict guidelines. Designers are often put into a tight box. So keep that in mind as we go through this list, but let's take it from the top. Number 10. It pains me to put this one on the list, but it's actually a great example of what I was just talking about. DeWalt paint schemes on their own are always some of my favorite. Even the Ream, red and black, look sharp. I'm a fan. But this year for the Daytona 500, Gibbs Racing tried to mash both together. Somehow this scheme looks both too busy and incomplete at the same time. The yellow just stops halfway through this thing. The logo on the door, I'm pretty sure, is written in Times New Roman font. It looks like they literally stamped the Ream logo onto the side, just trying to find space for it. I think they knew this paint scheme wasn't cohesive, so they tried to distract us by making the 20 on the door chrome. Not gonna fall for it this time, Gibbs Racing. Nice try. This paint scheme, unfortunately, lands at number 10. At number 9, this paint scheme's not terrible, it's just incredibly disappointing. Bubba Wallace McDonald's. Why is it so gray, flat, lifeless? Remember that episode of SpongeBob where the Krusty Krab gets taken over by some, corporate nationwide chain and the Krabby Patties turn into that gray sludge? McDonald's put that on a race car. This Big Mac looks inedible. The red on the side confuses me. It's organic, shapeless, kind of random, while the yellow up there on the roof is a nice geometric straight edge. This scheme doesn't make any sense, and it is a huge step backwards from McDonald's schemes of the past. Just last year, look at this. Bubba's got a whole Happy Meal on the side of his car. It looks great. There's no gray to be seen. It's bright red, the golden arches, white. This makes me hungry. This makes me sad. Shoot, remember 2 years ago when, there were French fries on the car and a poppy seed pattern? Moving on to number 8, for years, stock cars have been jokingly called 200 mile per hour billboards. Well, when you think about billboards on the side of the interstate, I immediately think of law firms with some guy in a gray suit and his arms folded and glaring at you. I picture something like this. Oh. Front Row Motorsports took the 200 mile per hour billboard joke quite literally. I hate to call this guy out, but it's just not a cool paint scheme. I'm sorry. Look on the hood. It looks unfinished. Gary, is that his name? His body is cut off right here, right at the torso. It could have kept going. I'll be honest. I thought about putting the two RCR Morgan & Morgan law firm schemes on here, but those at least were sharp black and yellow colors. Yeah, I'm biased. This one's just black, a little bit of red. Hey, Gary here is actually smiling. That's kind of nice, but the color scheme is kind of angry, so they don't really match. Gosh, and the poor guy was done dirty by the hood louvers. Oh, I'm not a fan of this one. I'm sorry. But let's move on to lucky number 7. Oh, my arch nemesis. First, it was the potato salad on the door. Then last year, I believe it was the old Windows, background. This year's paint scheme, I just don't get it. Why is it white? And why is there a streak of blue on the door? Is there a gap in the vinyl? Did he run the auto owner scheme the week before and they couldn't fully cover it up? There's just too much going on. If the whole car was just black, with that red trim there on the bottom and near the side skirt, I'd be okay with this. I'll even let the potato salad slide. But the white just makes it look incomplete to me. Or it makes me think of when Chase Elliott wrecked his primary car at Darlington and they only had enough decals to wrap the sides. This makes me think of that. This looks like a backup car. I hope that's not too harsh, but man, Reesers, we'll get it one of these years. At number 6, what is this? This car is just bread. It's a loaf of bread. I thought this was some sort of camo pattern at first, but no. Hey, I respect the creativity. I don't think I've ever seen a NASCAR stock car wrapped to look like a loaf of bread before. I'll give Sarah Lee here some credit. But this idea unfortunately turned stale pretty quickly, in my opinion. Just doesn't work for me. But hey, I'll at least give them points for trying. They took a shot at it, didn't quite work out, but at least they went down swinging. Ugh. Do we have to go through this every single year? At least the baby flames are gone. Hey, I'll give you that. But what's with all the black? You've got that bright green color. Let that do the work, for better or for worse. The all black bumper, again, it looks like he crashed this thing in practice and they had to go get one of those replacement noses and, fasten it on. It's not wrapped or anything. This car looks like it's got a spare bumper on it. I just don't understand. Your colors are bright green and red. Play to your strengths. I just don't get it. We got to move past this one. Oh, come on. It's bad enough when you go to a restaurant these days and they've got like a QR code taped to the table, but there's like a glare on it. It's blurry. It's faded. You're trying to get your camera right. The lighting is dim. Now try scanning a QR code on a race car going 200 miles per hour. Where is the sense? Where is the logic? QR codes do not belong on race cars. That is a hill I am willing to die on. I get it. Oh, when it's parked on pit road and it's stopped, you can go up and scan it. Sure, fine. How many people are going to see that? On pit road before the race, the only people there are usually VIPs who work for this company. They don't need a QR code to access their own website. You're trying to reach new fans, new people. They're in the grandstands 200 yards away. They can't scan your QR code. I guess what? Ryan Preece this year was not running up front. They weren't going to get this thing on TV so fans could scan it. QR codes on race cars make absolutely no sense. This thing takes up half the door, takes up the entire hood. Terrible. I am anti-QR code paint schemes. Let that be on the record. Oh my gosh, I almost forgot about this one. Relay had an alternate color scheme that actually looked kind of good. This black with that sort of green aqua color, the gray stripe. I don't love it, but that one works at least. This like white with that faded. What were they thinking? I see that they're racing at Las Vegas in this photo. Maybe the idea was, the desert sun has bleached the colors. It's supposed to look faded. That's the theme. I'm working as hard as I can over here. I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. Look at all that effectively blank, empty door space on a relatively flat white paint scheme. This guy was battling for a championship late in the season in this paint scheme. Ugh. It's so hard to go from his brightly colored Exalta schemes to the blue and red Liberty Flames to this. No, this just doesn't work for me. I'm sorry. And then there were two. At number 2, this one's just offensive. The side of this car looks great. Warm, melted, Velveeta, gooey cheese oozing over the curves of the next gen. Pretty big logo there on the door. It looks great. And then you see the hood. Then you see the front. Why is it white? Why does the melted cheese just stop abruptly? If you're gonna cover a car in cheese, cover the car in cheese. Not to mention the yellow on the 4 and the 47 doesn't even match the yellow of the cheese. We got 2 different kinds of cheeses in play here. What are we doing? All that blank white space on the hood. This scheme was this close to maybe being in my top 10 or 15 favorite schemes of the year, but they blew it. They choked at the 1-yard line. The layup was right in front of them and they missed it. That's why this scheme is so high on my negative list, because gosh, they were this close to doing something memorable, something good. And it all came suddenly crumbling down. This was such an avoidable mistake. Gosh. But I can't put this one at number 1. Before we get to my least favorite paint scheme of the season, let's go through a few dishonorable mentions. When I first saw these renders, it looked real flat, didn't love it. But when I saw this car on track, I still wish the Seaman's logo popped a bit more, but it wasn't terrible. This scheme's not bad, but man, they had to stamp that Loves logo onto the hood front and center, just kind of jarring. The bright blue looks gorgeous, but you can barely read the sponsor logo. And I'll admit, when watching this car on track, I thought the little resort mural on the side there was actually damaged for the longest time. On TV, it's small, kind of hard to see. I thought he'd been doored real hard. I was like, dang, look at all that, the scrapes, look at all the paint he's traded. It wasn't until they finally showed a close-up of this car that I realized, oh no, that's the paint scheme. It's not damaged, that's the scheme. Where do I even start with this one? There are too many different shades of red. The MVP logo on the hood is great, big, bold. Trying to write out magical vacation planner on the door, just it's not legible. Big, bold logos work best on fast race cars, my opinion. And hey, I've got to call attention to Blaney's Pennzoil Menards crossover. They've actually improved on this scheme a tiny bit. I've always despised the mismatched yellows. That Neon 12 just sticks out like a sore thumb. But this year it stuck out less. There was less neon yellow, less jarring. The door number is actually black. It's now only just bordered in neon yellow. I still don't love it, but it's a lot better than previous years. So I'll actually give them some credit. But those were the honorable mentions. Now let's get down to number one. The worst NASCAR Cup Series paint scheme of 2023. Tada! Oh, come on. Who did this? That's not funny. This has to be some kind of sick joke. No, yeah, I am just kidding. We'll get to the real number one in a moment, but I wanted to throw this up here because I'm not sure if I've told this story on the show. I think I have. But when we ran this paint scheme at Darlington, I was walking up and down pit road at the start of the race. I had my radio scanner. I think I was tuned into MRN, but I was getting some interference. Occasionally I could hear what sounded to be like a father and his young son, like up in the grandstand somewhere talking to each other. And at one point I hear the dad go, "Hey, that's Out of the Groove. I watched that show on YouTube. Hey." And on pit road, I'm like, whoa, yes, that's awesome. Someone noticed it. Yeah, we're running in last place, but this is why we did it. So people in the crowd would notice and hopefully get a kick out of it. I was touched. I was tickled. And then the son came over his radio and said, "That car is ugly." In a little high-pitched kid voice, I died. I about lost it. So not everyone was a fan. I figured this scheme should at least get an honorable mention because I straight up heard someone call this scheme really ugly. Not to my face, but it might as well have been. To each their own. Shout out to that dad if he's watching this video. I loved that little interaction. That was hilarious. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. It was an accident, but yeah, it was funny. My real number one, least favorite paint scheme of 2023, and I know this one will be polarizing. The Hamburger car. McDonald's went all out. They had the mascots at the racetrack. I actually bumped into the Hamburger and Grimace a couple different times. And side note, the Grimace scheme Bubba ran actually was really sharp. I really liked it. Screamed 90s. I love the purple. Good scheme. The theming of this Hamburger car was awesome. Fun to see those retro characters get some screen time. But the car itself is hideous. Like, can we all just objectively agree that this is a hideous paint scheme? And I'm still convinced that all the black and white hypnotic stripes, that was an attempt to get something past the laser scanning station. It has to be, right? I'm not one for conspiracy theories, but there had to have been some sort of manipulation or games being at least attempted there. No, this scheme's terrible. Come on. Look at the little McDonald's M on the side. It's like almost embarrassed to be on this car. It's barely visible behind the rear tires. It's memorable. I'll give it that, but it is an eyesore. I think that was kind of the point. I don't know. Maybe some people really love it. I love the nostalgia of it. Again, love the theme, love the activation, all of that great stuff. But the scheme itself, not doing it for me. Gives me a headache more than anything. But there you have it. My top 10 least favorite NASCAR Cup Series paint schemes of 2023. Do you guys agree with my list this time, or do y'all still disagree? I know a lot of folks did not like my list last week, said I missed out on a few key paint schemes. Fair enough. Art is subjective. What do you think of this list? Do you agree, disagree? Are there any that I missed, even in my honorable mentions? Let me know down in the comment section below. But thank you all so much for tuning in. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. And a huge thank you to my very generous Patreon supporters for continuing to keep this show growing each and every month. I will see you all again soon. Got plenty of off-season content still in the works. Have a wonderful rest of your day, folks.